Arabian billionaire hires poor girl, shocked to find she's the hidden heiress to his empire. It was the kind of scorching Dubai afternoon where the heat shimmered off marble driveways and luxury cars gleamed like mirrors. Inside a towering, glass skyscraper that pierced the sky like a silver dagger, the city's most feared and admired billionaire, Zain al-Masri, adjusted the cufflinks on his custom-made suit. He wasn't just rich. He was legendary, known for building an empire from scratch. He had power, wealth, and charm that turned heads in every room he walked into. But there was one thing Zain didn't have, and he didn't even know it was missing. Across the city, in a quieter, forgotten neighborhood, a young woman struggled to fix the strap on her worn-out sandals. Her name was Aliyah. She had big eyes that held the kind of sadness that comes from too many no's and too many empty promises. Aliyah worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on in the cramped apartment she shared with her younger brother. Life had never been kind, but she never let it break her spirit. Even when things got really bad, she smiled. Because that's what her mother always taught her before everything changed. Today was different, though. Today, her life was about to shift in a way she could never imagine. Zain was hiring. Not just anyone, he wanted a new personal assistant, and not the polished, overqualified, arrogant kind. He wanted someone real, honest, grounded, someone who wouldn't try to impress him with fake smiles or chase him for his money. His advisors thought he was crazy. His business partners warned him. But something inside Zain told him to trust his gut. So he ordered the job listing to go public, open to anyone, no filters. Aliyah never thought she'd be stepping into the tallest building in Dubai, much less applying to work for Zain al-Masri. She almost didn't go. Her resume was short, her clothes weren't designer, and the receptionist had already looked her up and down like she didn't belong. But she walked. In any way, head held high, and Zain noticed. From the moment she walked into his office, he felt it, that strange, magnetic pull. Not because she was stunning, although she was, but because she looked him in the eye like she wasn't afraid, like she had nothing to prove. It annoyed him, and intrigued him. The interview was short, unusual. Instead of asking her about her experience, Zain asked about her family, her values, her dreams. And Aliyah, tired of pretending, gave him the truth. She told him about her brother, about the nights she spent cleaning offices, about how she once had a different life, one that felt like a dream now. She didn't know why she was telling him all this, but something about Zain made her feel seen. He hired her on the spot, the office whispered. People stared. No one understood what he saw in her. But Zain didn't care. At first, Aliyah kept her head down. She did her job quietly, efficiently. Zain began to rely on her more than he expected. She was sharp, intuitive, and always 5 steps ahead. Slowly, she began to challenge him, question him, not in a disrespectful way, but with boldness he wasn't used to. And he liked it. Too much. But then strange things started happening. Box arrived at Zain's office. No return address. Inside it was an old family photo, yellowed and creased. Zain stared at it for hours. The man in the photo was his late father, but standing beside him was a little girl in a frilly white dress. She had big eyes, a soft smile. And on the back of the photo, scribbled in shaky handwriting, were the words, "Wa, find her. She is the key to everything." Zain didn't sleep that night. He began asking questions, digging through archives, making calls to people he hadn't spoken to in years. The deeper he looked, the more pieces didn't add up, and one name kept resurfacing in the files, the letters, the old bank records. Aliyah. He didn't want to believe it, but the more he watched her, the more he saw it. Her resemblance to his mother, her ability to read people like his grandfather used to, her calm in chaos. She didn't just belong in his world, she was born for it, except she had no idea. Zain was torn. If he told her who she really was, he'd lose everything. His empire, his position, his power. The company technically belonged to her. Her, inheritance had been hidden, stolen, erased from records after her mother disappeared. Aaliyah had lived her whole life in poverty, completely unaware that she was the rightful heir to one of the largest business empires in the Middle East. He wanted to protect her, but he also wanted to keep her close. So he did the one thing he promised he never would. He lied. He kept digging in secret, piecing together her past, even as their connection grew deeper. She made him laugh again. She challenged his pride. She reminded him what it meant to feel human. And just when he thought he was in control, he realized he wasn't, because someone else had found out too. Someone who would stop at nothing to keep Aaliyah from reclaiming what was hers. Someone from within his own circle. Someone with everything to lose if the truth came out. And as Zayn sat in his office late one night staring at the final document that confirmed everything, he heard footsteps behind him. Aaliyah's voice, soft but certain. "You lied to me." "Didn't you?" Zayn turned around slowly, heart pounding, realizing that everything, his empire, his secrets, his heart, was about to unravel. And this was just the beginning. Want to know what happens next? Don't forget to subscribe. Zayn didn't answer right away. He looked at Aaliyah standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable, the soft light behind her casting a faint shadow across the polished floor. The folder in his hands felt heavier now. Inside it was the truth about her identity, her inheritance, the empire she never knew was hers. And now she was standing just a few feet away, asking the question he feared the most. "You lied to me, didn't you?" His throat was dry. For a man who could command boardrooms and make billion-dollar decisions without blinking, Zayn found himself speechless. He wasn't used to this kind of confrontation, personal, raw, and impossible to dodge. He tried to study her face, to search for signs of how much she already knew. But Aaliyah had mastered the art of hiding her feelings. Life had trained her that way. She stepped closer, her eyes sharp. "I found the photo," she said quietly. "The one in the box. You left it in your drawer. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the meeting notes, but I saw it, and I saw the back." Zayn slowly placed the folder down. "Aaliyah, why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice low, almost trembling now. "Why am I seeing my face in a photo with your family? Why does my name keep showing up in places it shouldn't be? Why are there bank accounts, files, and signatures that lead back to me, yet I know nothing about them?" He stood up, not knowing whether to approach her or keep his distance. "Because I didn't know how," he admitted. "Because the truth changes everything." Aaliyah shook her head. "You mean it changes your life, your business, your legacy? You weren't protecting me, Zayn. You were protecting yourself." Those words stung more than he expected. She was right, of course. Part of him had wanted to tell her from the moment he saw the resemblance. But the deeper he got, the more complicated it became. The more afraid he felt of what it would mean. Not just for him, but for her too. If Aaliyah discovered who she truly was, everything she knew about her life, her mother, her past, it would all collapse. And he wasn't sure she was ready for that. Or maybe he wasn't ready. Aaliyah turned away, blinking fast like she didn't want him to see, her eyes getting wet. "You know, I thought you were different. Everyone warned me about you. They said you were cold, ruthless, but I told myself you saw something in me that others didn't. That maybe, just maybe, someone like you could be honest." Zayn stepped forward, regret tightening in his chest. "I do see something in you, Aaliyah. That's why I couldn't ignore it. That's why I kept digging even when I knew I was crossing lines I shouldn't. I just didn't know how to tell you." "Tell me what exactly?" she asked, spinning back around. "That I'm some lost heiress to an empire I've never even heard of? That I've been cleaning bathrooms while people stole what was mine? That my whole life was a lie?" Silence fell between them. Zayn's voice was soft now. "Your mother was my father's business partner. And more. They built the foundation of this company together before everything fell apart. After your mother disappeared, certain people made sure no one would ever come looking for you. They erased your name from everything. It wasn't until recently I found traces, small, buried clues. That's when I realized who you were. Aaliyah swallowed hard. So you hired me to confirm your theory? To keep me close in case you were right? No, Zane said firmly. I hired you because you walked into my office with more courage than most men I've met. Because you were honest. Because you didn't care about who I was or how much money I had. I didn't know the full truth when I offered you the job. But once I started piecing it together, I didn't know how to let you go. She stood still, breathing uneven. Everything she had ever believed about her life was being rewritten in a single conversation. And the person holding the pen was the very man she had begun to trust, maybe even more than she should have. But there's more, she said slowly, looking at him now with a sharpness that made his heart ache. Isn't there? Someone else knows. Someone's trying to stop this truth from coming out. Zane nodded. Yes. There are people who would lose everything if your identity is confirmed. People who have been part of this company for decades. They think you're a threat, and they're right. You are. Do you think I want to take your empire? Aaliyah asked bitterly. I didn't ask for any of this, Zane. I just wanted a job, a way to take care of my brother. I never asked to be anyone's heir. But you are, he replied quietly, whether you want it or not. She looked away again, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Zane could see the storm inside her, fear, confusion, anger, and somewhere deep beneath all of it, pain. She had lived her life in survival mode, never knowing the truth was being hidden just beyond her reach. And now that she knew, nothing would be the same. You should have told me sooner, she whispered. I know. Just then a loud vibration interrupted the moment. Zane's phone lit up on his desk. One word flashed across the screen. Breached. He froze, picked it up. The message was from his head of security. Third floor server room compromised. File. Extraction in progress. Someone's trying to wipe the identity records. His stomach dropped. He looked at Aaliyah. They know, he said, voice tense. They're trying to erase you again. Aaliyah's face hardened. Not this time. Zane stared at her, both stunned and deeply moved by her quiet strength. The girl who walked into his life looking for a job was now the biggest threat to some of the most powerful men in his world, and she didn't even flinch. But as the night closed in and shadows crept across the glass walls of his office, neither of them knew how far the people in the dark were willing to go to keep the truth buried, or just how much danger was about to unfold. Because someone wasn't just trying to erase the past, they were willing to destroy the future, and Aaliyah had just become their #1 target. To be continued, Zane moved fast. His fingers flew across his phone as he typed instructions to his private security team. Lock down the server floor, no one in or out. He looked up to find Aaliyah staring at him, her jaw tight, fists clenched. The quiet determination in her eyes reminded him again that she wasn't some fragile girl in need of rescue. She was stronger than most people he'd ever known. I need you to come with me, he said quickly, grabbing a key card from his drawer. It's not safe here anymore. Aaliyah didn't argue. She followed him down the hallway past glass offices and polished marble columns. The building that once felt like a symbol of success now felt like a trap. Every reflection in the windows looked suspicious. Every passing employee suddenly felt like they were watching. Aaliyah's heart pounded in her chest, and not from fear, but from the terrifying thought that someone had been watching her long before she ever found out the truth. They reached the elevator. Zane swiped his card and hit the emergency override. To the basement level, his private security vault. Aaliyah didn't speak until the doors slid shut. Who's behind this? She asked quietly. Zane hesitated, then replied, There's a board member, Jamal al-Hariri. He was once your mother's closest ally. When she vanished, he rose quickly through the ranks, too quickly. I didn't question it before, but now, I think he knew. Knew what? She asked. That you existed. That your mother had a child. That one day you could come back and claim everything. Aaliyah shook her head. So he erased me. Or helped someone else do it, Zane said grimly. Your mother didn't just disappear. I think she was forced out. The elevator stopped with a soft ding. The doors opened to a dimly lit hallway lined with metal doors and keypads. This was where Zane kept the real secrets, the files, the backups, the unedited contracts. They stepped into a secured room where multiple monitors showed live feeds from every floor of the building. A technician was already waiting. Sir, we traced the breach, he said. It wasn't external. Someone inside the company tried to delete files from the backup database. They failed. But we're tracking their location. Zane leaned in. Show me. The technician tapped a few keys. A small red dot pulsed on a floor map. Level 17, Aaliyah narrowed her eyes. That's HR. Zane nodded. They're not after just one file. They're trying to erase your employment records too, make it like you were never here. But why now? She asked. Why not when I was hired? Because now they know I've figured it out, he said. And they're scared. A beat of silence passed between them before Zane added, There's more. I think someone's watching your apartment. We've noticed unusual surveillance near your building. Aaliyah felt a chill creep up her spine. My brother, he's safe for now, Zane said quickly. I had him moved to one of our secure properties this morning just in case. She looked at him, stunned. You did that without telling me? I couldn't risk waiting. Aaliyah wanted to be angry, but part of her was relieved. Her brother was all she had left. Knowing he was protected, even if secretly, meant more than she could admit. Still, the thought of strangers watching their small, humble apartment like vultures waiting to strike made her stomach turn. We need to fight this, she said firmly. We can't just sit here hiding while they try to erase me. Zane looked at her, surprised by the fire in her voice. We will, he said. But we need to be smart. Jamal isn't working alone. There's at least 3 others on the board who've been benefiting from this cover-up. We expose them too soon, they'll destroy every piece of proof we have. Aaliyah folded her arms. So what's the plan? Zane turned to the technician. I need full access to the internal servers. I want everything that mentions Aaliyah's name. Every deleted file, every transfer, every shadow account. The technician nodded. It'll take time. Then work fast, Zane said. This is no longer just a business matter. It's personal. While the technician worked, Aaliyah stepped away to catch her breath. Her mind was spinning. One day, she was barely making enough money to buy groceries. The next, she was the secret heir to a billion-dollar empire, targeted by powerful people who would rather see her disappear than let the truth come out. But something else nagged at her. Something Zane hadn't said yet. There's still something. You're not telling me, she said, turning back to face him. He looked at her, then away. Your mother didn't just vanish. Before she disappeared, she tried to move a large sum of money into a trust fund, for you. That account never activated, it was frozen. And the signature on the freeze order belonged to someone with my father's clearance. Aaliyah's stomach dropped. You think your father knew? I think he helped cover it up, Zane said softly. And I think Jamal blackmailed him. So everyone just let me vanish? He nodded. And they got rich doing it. Aaliyah pressed her lips together, holding back the emotion rising in her throat. This wasn't just about business. It was betrayal. It was loss. It was her life, rewritten by people she had never even met. And now, they were trying to do it again. Zane placed a hand on her shoulder gently. We're going to make this right. But before she could respond, a sharp alarm went off in the room. Unauthorized access on level 7, the technician said. They're trying again. Different server. Zane's face hardened. They're panicking. That means we're close. Aaliyah stared at the screen, her heart racing. Somewhere in that building, people were trying to erase her past, her future, everything. But for the first time, she wasn't scared. She was ready. The war for the truth had just begun. To be continued. The building was quiet. Too quiet. Zane and Aaliyah moved carefully through the service hallway, their footsteps muffled against the polished floor. Lights flickered overhead as if even the power supply was uncertain of what was about to unfold. Aaliyah's heart beat faster with each step. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound a warning. And yet she kept going. She wasn't the same girl who'd walked into the lobby weeks ago looking for a receptionist job. That girl was gone. Now, she was the missing heiress, walking through the heart of the empire built on her stolen legacy. Zane stopped near a side elevator that required a thumbprint and eye scan. "This is the fastest way to the boardroom," he said. "They're meeting now. We have to get in before they vote." Aaliyah frowned. "Vote on what?" "Whether or not to sell off the majority shares of the company," Zane replied. "If they succeed, the power shifts to their hands permanently. We'll lose every chance of proving what they did." "And you think they'll go through with it knowing I exist?" He looked at her. "If they erase you first, yes." The door opened, with a soft chime, and they stepped inside. The ride up felt endless. Aaliyah clenched her fists, her mind racing with everything she'd learned, about her mother, about the betrayal, about the fortune hidden behind lies. She wasn't ready to confront them, not really, but she didn't have a choice. Not anymore. When the doors opened, the hallway to the boardroom was already guarded. 2 men in suits stood by the double doors, speaking quietly into earpieces. Zane stepped forward. "Tell Jamal we're coming in." One of the men hesitated. He said no interruptions. Zane's tone sharpened. "Tell him I said it's not a request." The man shifted uncomfortably but eventually tapped his earpiece and nodded toward the door. They stepped aside. Inside, the room buzzed with tension. Around a long mahogany table sat 12 board members, faces stiff and unreadable. Jamal sat at the head, cool and composed, as if he'd been expecting this moment all along. His eyes flicked to Aaliyah, but his expression didn't change. "Interesting," he said, his voice smooth. "The girl of the hour." Aaliyah didn't flinch. "You tried to erase me." Jamal leaned back slightly. "I didn't try. I succeeded. Until now." Zane stepped in beside her. "It's over, Jamal. We have the documents, the bank trails, the freeze order, everything. You're finished." The others exchanged tense glances, but Jamal remained calm. "You think you can just walk in here and rewrite history?" "It's not rewriting," Aaliyah said. "It's correcting." He laughed under his breath. "You're nothing more than a story your mother told, a rumor, an orphan with no proof of blood." Zane pulled out a small folder and tossed it on the table. "DNA test, signed, verified. You want to challenge it? Be my guest. But the press will eat you alive." Jamal's smile vanished. The tension crackled in the air. One of the other board members, an older woman with silver hair, cleared her throat. "Even if it's true, there's no clause stating the daughter of Samira Hassan has automatic rights. She was never officially declared dead. Her shares were frozen. Legally, this changes nothing." Zane countered quickly. "It changes everything. Samira's disappearance was manipulated. Her shares weren't just frozen. They were stolen, moved to shell companies, redirected to accounts that just happened to benefit you and Jamal. We traced the transfers, every single one." A hush fell over the room. Jamal's hand twitched near his glass of water. "Careful, Jamal," Aaliyah said softly. "You're not as calm as you want them to think." His jaw tightened. "You don't belong here." "Funny," she said. "That's exactly how my mother felt the night she was forced to leave." "Did you tell her that before or after you signed the freeze order in my name?" Zane took a step forward. "We know what you did, but we're not just here to accuse. We're here to stop you." Suddenly, the room's security alarm went off. The red lights above the door began flashing. Everyone turned. Jamal stood up. "Enough of this." But then, the head of security entered, followed by 2 more guards. "Sir," he said to Zane, "we intercepted a transmission. Someone tried to delete the boardroom audio files from our central archive. We traced the command. It came from this room." Jamal's face paled. "I have nothing to do with that," he said quickly. But the technician stepped forward holding a tablet. "It was your credentials, Mr. Al-Hariri. Your laptop, your fingerprint scan. Logged at 2:03 p.m. The room erupted in murmurs. Several board members stood, unsure of what to say or believe. Jamal reached for his phone, but Zain moved faster. He grabbed it and handed it to the guard. "You're done," Zain said. Jamal looked around, realizing no one was backing him now. Aaliyah turned to the others. "This company was built on my mother's vision. A vision that was stolen, buried, and replaced with greed. But now you all know the truth. What you do next will define what this empire becomes." And then came a voice from the back, weak, shaky but powerful in its own way. "I remember her," said one of the oldest board members. "Samira, she was brilliant, kind. She didn't deserve what happened." Another member nodded slowly. "If the documents are real, she deserves justice." But just as it seemed the tide was turning, a loud crash echoed from the hallway. Everyone froze. Aaliyah turned to Zain. "What was that?" He looked toward the door, then back at the guard. "Check it." The guard nodded and stepped out. Seconds passed. Too many. Then came shouting. Another crash. Zain rushed forward, but the guard staggered back into the boardroom, bleeding from the forehead. "They're here," he gasped. "Someone hired outside men, armed. They're trying to wipe the vault." Zain's face went pale. The last backup files, the only undeniable proof left, were stored in that vault. If they lost that, they lost everything. Without waiting, Zain turned to Aaliyah. "Come on, we have to get there before they do." She didn't hesitate. The chase had begun, and the truth was just moments from slipping away. Zain and Aaliyah moved quickly, their feet pounding against the marble floors as they rushed toward the vault. The air in the building felt colder now, the once vibrant corridors now suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in on them. The guard's bloodied face flashed through Aaliyah's mind as she pushed forward, dread creeping into her chest. Whoever was attacking them was well prepared, and they were getting closer with every second. Zain pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen. "We need backup now." His voice was steady, but Aaliyah could hear the urgency underlying it. This wasn't just about exposing a few criminals anymore. They were fighting for their lives. Aaliyah could feel the weight of the moment pressing on her. She'd spent so many years just surviving, never imagining that one day she'd be fighting for something much bigger than herself, fighting for the legacy her mother had built. But she was no longer afraid. This was her battle now, and she was determined to win it. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, this time longer, almost as if someone had cut the power intentionally. The building seemed to groan in protest, the alarms in the background growing louder, more urgent. Aaliyah's heart skipped a beat. The attackers weren't just targeting the vault, they were trying to shut down everything. They were going to erase her, her mother's legacy, and everything that had ever been built here in one clean sweep. They reached the vault entrance, but before Zain could swipe his card, the doors burst open. Two figures dressed in black rushed toward them, guns drawn. Without thinking, Zain threw himself in front of Aaliyah, his body a shield between her and the intruders. "Get down!" Zain shouted, pushing her to the floor. The sound of a gunshot rang out, echoing through the hall. Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat as she instinctively covered her head. The blast hit the wall behind them, sending fragments of concrete scattering. Zain's voice was a sharp command, "Move!" But as they scrambled to get up, something strange happened. The door to the vault opened on its own. No card, no security measures. It was as if someone had already gained access. Aaliyah's eyes widened in disbelief. "Who?" Zain's gaze narrowed, and without another word he rushed forward, pulling her along. They entered the vault expecting to find the attackers still in pursuit, but instead the room was empty. The safe was wide open, documents scattered across the floor. But there was something far more unsettling in the center of the room, a single black envelope sealed with wax waiting for them. Zain knelt down and picked it up cautiously, his eyes scanning the room. "This wasn't just a random attack," he muttered, ripping the seal open. Aaliyah's pulse quickened as Zain pulled out the contents, a letter written in elegant looping script. He scanned the page and his face went pale. "What is it?" Aaliyah asked, her voice shaky. Zane's grip tightened on the paper. It's from someone in the company, someone who knew exactly what was going to happen. Aliyah stepped forward, her heart pounding. Who's it from? Zane paused, his eyes flicking to hers. Then, with a breath that seemed to carry the weight of everything they were facing, he spoke the name that made her blood run cold. It's from my father. Aliyah's stomach dropped. Zane's father, who she'd known to be a man of power and influence in the company, had always been someone she'd considered an ally, albeit a distant one. But now, to know that he was involved in this, that he was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, shattered everything she had believed. The letter was brief, cryptic, and chilling. If you're reading this, you've already figured it out. You've uncovered the truth about your mother's disappearance, but don't be too quick to claim victory. What I've done for the future of the company. There's more at play here than you realize. The empire your mother built is not just a business, it's a legacy. And that legacy will never be handed over to someone unprepared, not to you, Zane, and certainly not to her. You've been warned. The game isn't over yet. Your father. Zane stared at the letter for a long moment, his face unreadable. Aliyah's thoughts raced. Her mother's disappearance, the stolen legacy, the board's betrayal. None of it was as simple as it seemed. If Zane's father had been involved in hiding the truth, then that meant he had been playing a long game, one far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. This changes everything, Zane finally said, his voice low and thick with disbelief. Aliyah shook her head. No, it can't. You can't be telling me your father is behind all of this. Zane didn't answer immediately. He stared at the letter in his hand, as though trying to make sense of the words. Aliyah could see the weight of the situation, crushing him, but she knew they couldn't afford to stop. Not now. Not when they were so close. Why would he want to keep me from claiming my inheritance? Aliyah asked almost to herself. Zane's eyes snapped to hers. It's not just about the money, it's the power. This company, my father, he's not the man you think he is. He's always had his own agenda. Suddenly the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall, sharp and quick. The moment was slipping away. Aliyah's mind raced. She needed answers. She needed to know what was happening, and why her own flesh and blood seemed so determined to keep her from the truth. But before they could act, the door to the vault slammed shut, locking them inside. Aliyah's breath caught in her throat. They were trapped. Zane pounded on the door, his voice rising in frustration. What the hell? The lights flickered, again, this time plunging the room into total darkness. The sound of machinery whirred to life, a loud hum vibrating through the walls. Aliyah felt her heart leap in her chest. Something was coming, something big, and it was coming for them. In the darkness. Zane's voice was a low whisper. They knew we would come here, they were waiting for us. Aliyah's pulse quickened. She could hear her own breath, shaky and shallow. She could feel the walls closing in. The stakes were higher than ever now. Not only were they up against a powerful enemy who wanted to destroy everything they had, but someone, possibly even closer than they knew, had been orchestrating this entire ordeal from the very beginning. The game was far from over. To be continued, the room was suffocating. In the oppressive silence that followed the flickering lights, Aliyah's heart raced as she strained her ears, listening for any sign of movement outside the vault. She could feel the cold sweat trickling down her back, the air thick with tension. Zane had stopped banging on the door and was now pacing, furiously, his hands clenched into fists. I won't let them lock us in here, Zane muttered under his breath, his face flushed with anger. Not after everything. Aliyah swallowed hard. But what if this is it? What if they've planned every step of this? Zane stopped pacing, looking at her with a mix of desperation and determination. We can't give up. We came this far, Aliyah. We know the truth. We know the players. Now we just have to make sure it all comes out. The hum of machinery around them grew louder, vibrating through the floor beneath their feet. Aliyah could feel the temperature drop even more. It was as if the entire building was alive with a cold, predatory energy. Her mind raced. Who had set this trap? Who was orchestrating this final game? The envelope, the locked vault, and now the dead silence that had enveloped them. It was all too much to be coincidental. Suddenly, the vault door creaked open. Both Zayn and Aliyah jumped, instinctively stepping back. A figure stood in the doorway, bathed in shadow, their face concealed by a dark mask. "You're too late," the figure said, voice muffled but unmistakable. "The game was never in your hands." Zayn's hand immediately went to his pocket, where his phone sat. But before he could make a move, the figure stepped inside the vault, lifting a small device, a button. He pressed it without hesitation. The entire vault lit up. Aliyah's eyes widened in shock as the walls came alive with flashing lights and screens. Everything was digital. The vault wasn't just a storage room. It was a command center. "No," Zayn whispered. "This can't be happening." The masked figure chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "It's been happening for years. Everything you've uncovered, all the evidence you think you have, it's all been under our control. You're playing in a game where the rules don't exist." Zayn's eyes flicked to Aliyah. "Who are you?" The figure stepped forward, lowering the mask to reveal a familiar face. A face Zayn knew all too well. His own father. Aliyah gasped, her eyes darting from Zayn to the man standing before them. "You? You've been behind all of this?" Jamal al-Hariri looked at them with cold, calculating eyes. "Surprised, Zayn? You should be. I've been setting this all up for years. And you were always too busy to notice, too blinded by your own morals to see the empire I've been building, one that doesn't need you, doesn't need anyone but me." Zayn staggered backward, his expression one of disbelief. This is a lie. You can't possibly— "You think your little rebellion is the first time I've had to clean up a mess?" Jamal interrupted, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you can just walk in and undo everything I've worked for? This company, this fortune, is mine to control. It was never meant to be handed over to some heir who doesn't even understand what it takes to keep things running smoothly." Aliyah's eyes narrowed. "So all of this, the attacks, the manipulation, the lies, it was all to keep the truth hidden? To keep me from claiming what's mine?" Jamal smirked. "The truth was never yours to claim, Aliyah. You're just a pawn in a game much bigger than you. And now with this vault, this company, I'm untouchable." Zayn clenched his fists, his jaw tight. "You'll never get away with this." "Won't I?" Jamal's voice was almost mockingly soft. "I already have." The air seemed to still as a new presence made itself known behind Jamal. Aliyah's breath hitched as another figure appeared in the doorway, the same security guard who had been with them earlier. But this time there was no confusion in his eyes. His stance was different too, firm, sure. His hand was now resting on the holster at his side. The guard stepped forward, locking eyes with Aliyah and Zayn. "It's over," he said quietly. "This wasn't about money. It was always about power." Zayn's face went pale as realization hit him like a freight train. You're part of this too?" The guard smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I've been loyal to the real king of this empire. Your father always knew who to trust. You were just too naive to see it." The world seemed to spin for a moment as Aliyah struggled to process everything. Her mind was racing, trying to connect the dots between the betrayal and the overwhelming truth she was facing. The guard, the vault, Jamal's cold disregard for everything she and Zayn had fought for. It was all part of a larger plan that had been in motion far longer than they'd known. But before she could speak, the vault's security system beeped loudly, drawing everyone's attention. Another screen flashed to life, showing a countdown. It was counting down to something big. Jamal's face twisted with triumph. "You think you can stop me now? You think you have control over anything? Watch and learn." The countdown reached its final seconds. With a deafening boom, the entire vault began to shake. The lights flickered again, then went dark completely. Aliyah's heart pounded in her chest as she grabbed Zayn's arm, pulling him back. "What's happening? What did you do?" Jamal laughed, his voice echoing in the darkness. "The truth? I just pressed the final button. The one that will erase everything, the company's assets, the evidence, your inheritance. Gone. But then, in the midst of the chaos, there was a sudden, unexpected voice that broke through the noise. "No," said a calm, steady voice. Aliyah froze. The room slowly illuminated again, this time with a soft, warm light. Standing in the doorway was none other than her mother, Samira, the woman she had believed lost to her forever, alive, and standing tall as if no time had passed. "Impossible," Jamal gasped. Aliyah's mind reeled, her heart skipping a beat. "Mom?" Samira smiled, her eyes full of both sadness and strength. "You've been living in the lies I built to protect you, but now it's time to finish what I started." The twist was only beginning, and nothing would ever be the same again. Aliyah stood frozen, her mind struggling to comprehend the woman standing in the doorway. Her mother, Samira, was alive. It was as though time had slowed, and everything she thought she knew had been turned upside down. The woman who had disappeared years ago, leaving Aliyah with 1,000 unanswered questions, was standing right in front of her, and yet the scene before her was anything but a reunion. Jamal's face turned a deep shade of crimson. His hands were clenched at his sides, his breath quickening. "You," he started, his voice faltering as though the shock of seeing Samira was too much for him. "How is this possible? You were supposed to be dead." Samira took a step forward, her expression calm but unwavering. "You thought you could erase me. You thought you could hide the truth from our daughter. But you underestimated one thing. Jamal. My love for her." Zayn, still by Aliyah's side, leaned in close, whispering, "This doesn't make sense. How did you survive? What's going on?" Samira met his gaze, her eyes full of pain and strength. "I faked my death, Zayn. I had to. Jamal was far more dangerous than you could ever imagine. He built an empire on lies, deceit, and control. When I realized what he was doing, I had no choice but to disappear. But I always kept an eye on Aliyah. I knew she would need to know the truth one day." Aliyah's mind was racing. Her world had just shattered. Everything she had believed about her mother's disappearance, about the family she thought she knew, had been a lie. And now, here was her mother, alive and more powerful than ever. But it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about the legacy, the inheritance, and the empire that was at the heart of this tangled web of secrets. "I couldn't let you walk into this trap, Aliyah," Samira continued, her voice steady. "Jamal knew I was alive, but he thought I would never return. He never expected me to raise our daughter in secret, to make sure she had everything she needed to fight him when the time came." Jamal's eyes darted between his wife and daughter. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Samira. You don't understand the power I hold. You and Aliyah can't stop me. You never could." "But we just did," Samira said, her voice full of quiet triumph. The air in the vault seemed to shift. The tension that had been building for so long was finally beginning to break, but not in the way Jamal had hoped. Aliyah looked around, her thoughts whirling, and then she turned back to her mother. "So, this whole thing, it was all a plan? You knew this day would come?" Samira nodded. "Yes. Every step, every decision I made was to prepare you. I had to make sure you were ready to take control of what was rightfully yours." Jamal let out a harsh laugh. "You think she's ready? She's a child. A girl who has no idea what she's up against." Aliyah's eyes burned with determination. She wasn't a child anymore. She had learned, fought, and uncovered truths that had been hidden for far too long. She wasn't going to let Jamal destroy everything her mother had built, everything she had fought for. The company, the inheritance, and the future of her family were in her hands now, and she wasn't about to back down. "I don't need your approval," Aliyah said, her voice strong. "I've had enough of being controlled. I know what I need to do now." Samira smiled at her daughter, pride shining in her eyes. "That's my girl." Zayn stepped forward, his hand on Aliyah's shoulder. "We'll do this together, Aliyah. You're not alone anymore." Jamal sneered, his expression twisted with rage. You think you can just take everything from me? You think I'll let you destroy my empire? But Samira was resolute. Your empire was built on lies, Jamal. On manipulation. It's crumbling now. It always was. With one last, defiant glare at his former wife and daughter, Jamal turned and stormed out of the vault. His footsteps echoed in the distance, fading into nothing. The finality of it all left Aliyah breathless, but there was no time to waste. She turned to her mother. Mom, what happens now? Samira's eyes softened. Now we rebuild, but this time we do it right, together. And so, in the weeks that followed, Aliyah took control. The empire that her father had tried to manipulate for years began to shift. With Samira by her side, and Zayn helping every step of the way, they worked to dismantle the corruption that had taken root and rebuild the company on a foundation of honesty, transparency, and integrity. The lessons they had learned, the battles they had fought, were the pillars of a new beginning. Aliyah's strength and resilience were tested every day. There were still people in the company who wanted to see her fail. People who believed Jamal's empire was invincible, but she was determined to prove them wrong. She worked tirelessly, building alliances, making smart decisions, and gaining the trust of those who had been loyal to her mother. The more she took charge, the more she realized just how much her mother had sacrificed. Samira had done everything to protect her, to ensure she had the tools to stand on her own. It wasn't just about money, it was about family, about the legacy they would leave behind. Samira had always known that the power wasn't in the empire, it was in the love they shared as a family, the truth that had been buried beneath lies for so long. Aliyah's victory wasn't just in reclaiming her inheritance, it was in finding herself. It was in realizing that the person she had always been searching for, the woman she admired, the one who had made her who she was right in front of her all along. As the sun set on the horizon, Aliyah stood on the balcony of the penthouse that had once belonged to her father. The city stretched out before her, its lights twinkling like 1,000 possibilities. Her mother stood beside her, looking out at the world they were about to shape together. You've done it, Aliyah, Samira said softly. You've changed everything. Aliyah smiled, her heart full of hope. We've done it, Mom, together. And with that, the empire was truly hers, not because of the wealth, the power, or the inheritance, but because she had found her place in the world. She had found her strength, her purpose, and no one could ever take that from her.